team or the company draws advisory phase from the different family members. There is a structuring aspect which we will talk, further as we speak. So, and there are a lot of benefits of a family office. Because we set up a family office in 2002, when Patni computers were sold in 2011, we had the team and the process which we could manage a larger office. So it was very seamless for us to manage. So yeah, these are some of the things we can talk in detail. I would give it back to Vivek now.
That's an excellent introduction. I think 2 points really come to mind from there. One is, how early do you start? Patni started Patni Computers at the family office way before he actually sold the business. And second is, how do you manage conflict of interest? And I think none no better to talk about those aspects than Amit. Please explain that.
I think my fellow panelist Amit has covered most of the things on what actually is a one. You should have a dedicated team, as Amit said, but I think today it is becoming a little too fashionable that everyone is wanting to set up a family office for the heck of it. It is becoming a bit of a vanity. Sorry, am I audible? Better? Oh. So I was saying the one, in addition to what Amit has said, one, we should avoid setting up a family office for the sake of vanity, because over the last 3 years, it's become a little bit fashionable. Every other successful entrepreneur wants to have a family office. So when you want to set up a family office, you should be very clear. Not only do you have a demarcated team which is going to manage the affairs of the wealth of the family, which is separate from the core operations of the business. It is not the business CFO who should be also looking at the investment decision. It's not just about sharing of resource. The more important thing is the mindset is very different. The goal is very different. The approach to the subject has to be very different. So one, when you are ready with that mindset, is you should start doing it. You should not come under peer pressure. Why you should set it up? There are multiple reasons in addition to what Amit said. I think earning, say, X amount of money over 20 years is very easy. But to maintain and continue to grow it over the next 100, 200 years is extremely difficult. You can know many people over the last 30 years of your journey. I can see many accomplished businessmen sitting here who in their one generation created hundreds of millions of wealth. But tell me, around your own friends, how many have you seen who have not been able to survive after a generation or two? Their families were at one point of time very big shots when you were studying in college. But today they are nowhere to be seen. So businesses are businesses, we are risk takers, we do take, but I think ensuring that it is from generation to generation successfully handled and grown is very important. So that mindset has to come in. Starting point is the mindset. Second is then we should learn from the peer group, both in India and successful families in Europe, and see case to case. There is no one size solution. Every context, every family is different. You need to get into the facets of your own family and then start. So I'll just pause now and then maybe we can speak later. So that's my 2 cents on this.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the mindset change is the key thing. Mindset of maybe just 30, 40 years to maybe 100, 200 years. Right? And for that, creating a robust structure is absolutely key. I'll ask Amit to come in and talk about structuring, how we manage to structure that the whole system of their own family office.
Am I audible everywhere? Yeah, okay. So, in addition to both Amit who have already covered a lot of points about the family This is better? Yeah. Okay. So, just one quick addition to what both Amit said about setting up a family office first, and then I'll come to the question that Vivek asked. So, as entrepreneurs, you will definitely relate to this, that you concentrate on your business, operating business, because that's what actually creates the wealth in the first place, which will be in turn managed by the family office. So that concentration is very much important for your business. You don't get enough time to allocate to manage the family investments. Here, and as Mr. Bhatni was saying exactly the same point, that these two things are very different. It requires two different mindsets. And these two different mindsets, when they come together, so you will strive hard to create wealth out of your operating business. The family office is relentlessly working to preserve and enhance it. And this too becomes a very formidable combination, because one side is generating wealth, other side is preserving and enhancing. The picture becomes complete, and that is the reason why family offices should be set up. That is first thing. Now, the question comes to structuring. The family office is not something like a recognized entity by Indian corporate law. That this is what is called family office. Like for example, we know what is private limited, we know what is an LLP, we know what is a listed company. But there is no format for family office. This family office can be set up in any way you want. It can be set up as an LLP, it can be set up as a private limited company, depending on the activities you want to undertake and depending on your family dynamics. These structures can be established. It can be anything, and that's the most flexible. You don't have to fit yourself into anything. So this is one broader level. As a family office structure, I would put these are the panelists we add to it definitely.
Thank you. Just a bit on structuring. In fact, I would go probably one step further. When we think about a 100-year, 200-year mindset, one aspect of structuring becomes succession. How do we actually plan for succession so that we don't end up as shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves? We want that family wealth to be preserved over generations and grown and managed responsibly. All different things. So in fact, as a succession plan, Bhatni, we talked about what succession plan you had put in place in your setup, very noble, that will sustain generations.
Yeah, I think first is, I'll repeat what I said is, so we have a team of professionals at Ray Global. We have a CIO, we have a CFO, we have analyst, back office. So one is it's a seamless transition. Every year, my CIO will tell me this is the plan for the year, asset allocation. This is the returns we want to achieve. I want to take moderate risk. So I say, look, I don't want to lose money, I don't want to be having sleepless night. So we decide that okay, this is my broad range, what will be a balanced portfolio. And then I leave it to the CIO to make the day-to-day decisions. Because one thing I've learned from my father was making a mistake. He was every day going to my other CIO and saying, "Oh, share le lo, ye share aaj nahi liya." And then one day he said, "No, sell all the shares because I read somewhere that we are not making enough profit." So finally, the CIO used to come and tell me and my brother, who are involved in the family office, that look, we cannot have this because we need discipline approach. So I've set this in process here. So I can go and on a 1 month trip to London without worrying because I know the system will run. And that's very important because if something happens to me, money goes to my wife or my children, system will run. I keep telling my wife many times, I said, don't worry, everything is in place, my will is in place, I have trust which is for my daughters. I have a team who will seamlessly go on doing what they are doing, and you are a signatory on my account, you can sign checks, we have that things in place. So, and I made a will for my daughter, I made a will even, and I have protected my trust in such a way because one of my daughters is already married. So I made a trust where actually it's in perpetuity. And I'm sure my son was very good. But I made sure that, something doesn't work out between my son and daughter. The money gets protected. So I've taken that also. So, I think succession planning means that your system should work. If something happens to you, everything should work seamlessly for the family.
One unique case is that, Mr. Patni, in your case is where you have sold the operating business and there is the family wealth is to preserve. I mean, in your case, you have an operating business also to manage, right? How does the family manage that?
So I think we've got both legs. One part is we have multiple operating businesses, not one. So segregation of ownership and management to a large extent is done, which does not mean that the owners are absolutely hands-off, but it's an 80-20 type principle, I would say, where 80% of it is dependent only on the operating CEOs respectively. And 20% the owners are still active and we manage at a high level what is happening on the strategic part of things. The second part of our thing, other than the operating businesses, is the family office wealth, which is pure investments. Now there are things like ring fencing, if something goes wrong inside of the business, at least you have one part which is ring fenced from multiple risks, from the business and other external risks as well. So, and succession planning, I think as we were speaking, there's one big challenge there. The smartest of people want to avoid it. You have a case where, like for example, Dhirubhai Ambani also, there was no succession planning there, and you see what happened. He was smart. Topic. It's a very sensitive topic. You have 3 children, all of them you like, some capabilities, some not. No one wants to bite the bullet and take it easy. But I think it's better, we've seen in many multiple cases, that you should work with the right set of advisors, get your context right, don't try to follow what a particular friend has done, get your own context, see what the realities of your family are and what want you do. Say for example, Amit said, it's his daughter, perpetuity, for his grandchildren also, and maybe afterwards also. So you set up things, balance the needs that you have in the short term over the next 5 years, what needs you may have over the next 20 years, and keep some things for uncertainty also. So there are multiple aspects, but I think getting the right advisors, listening to them, understanding, appreciating your context, and learning from peers, not copy-paste from peers. Learning from peers, their experiences, but applying your own mind with everything is, I think, is the key. It's a difficult bullet to bite, but I think the better you do it is better. And again, estate planning is something different, which I think Amol will touch upon. And there is tax and there is cost impacts over there. So another advantage of doing succession planning is, if estate duty were to come in, you sort of take care of that as well. Otherwise, one part of your leg is like cutting your arm and leg and giving it away in taxes. So that's very.
So I'll just add, you touched upon a very, very important point actually regarding the estate duty. Before that, I'll quickly segregate 2 things, succession planning and estate planning. They are very similar, but succession planning usually refers to the perpetuity of the business, the management and control of your business. Business has to run perpetually without any claimants from external side or whatever, all those risks have to be taken care of and your business has to run. It's your baby, you have nurtured it, grown it. And the second part is the estate planning. And the estate planning generally refers to smooth transition of your wealth, family wealth, to the next generation. Now, the estate duty part is really, really very important here and relevant because this is, by the way, not new to India. This estate duty was prevalent before 1984 when it was abolished. And you would be surprised that it was at the rate of 85% of the market value of the assets that you transfer to the next generation. Now here, one residential house was exempt, but everything else was taken into the purview of estate duty. That is one so big chunk that actually goes out. Now, in 2012, the talks started to reintroduce the estate duty in Parliament. And I don't want to actually cry wolf on it because I don't know when it will be actually reintroduced. But what we need to understand is family office wealth or family wealth is a multi-generational thing. And estate duty is prevalent in most of the developed countries. So it's a matter of time that it will be reintroduced in India. I don't know which form it will be reintroduced into, or we don't know the law that will come in. But in some form, this will come in. That's what the consensus is. And considering that, we need to do it as early as possible. So, interestingly, we have been advising other families, very select few families which very marquee names on this particular aspect, as well as their overseas structuring investments and so on and so forth. What I gather from the discussions with them is that many families in India are, realizing this pressing need to do this, to create some structure. It can be trust structure, it can be in the form of, various private trusteeship companies as a trustee, corporate trustee of the trust, so many different things because they don't want to lose control. All these things can be put into they can be established into your family office to take care of this future risk, to mitigate that risk. And lastly, I would just mention one thing, that whenever this conflict comes, as how to transfer the assets to the next generation. Many a times when there is a death which is intestate or without any kind of this kind of structuring, we have seen in public domain so many disputes arising within the family. It's very, very unfortunate for the family as a whole. So it's very important that we need to take care of this. And apart from it, whatever investment part of it that you have, that also gets encompassed into it. So everything gets taken care of. That's what I would add as a succession planning part.
Thank you, Arun. In fact, I'll pass the next question on to you. When you mentioned investments, one of the key things in investments is diversification and risk management. Right? I wanted to talk about a little bit of how you manage risk diversification by divesting internationally.
Very, very interesting, and I will definitely try to keep this short because this is such a vast topic that it can go on for a long, long time. But I would start with mentioning two risks that we usually neglect. One is regulatory risk, and the second is a currency risk in the investment portfolio. Because this is diversification generally refers to diversification among asset classes. So I have got debt, I have got equity, I have got mutual funds, I have got private equity. All this is diversification among asset classes. But we have to remember the whole portfolio, if it is in India, it is subject to the laws of one jurisdiction. In other words, keeping all eggs in one basket, especially in the context of our Jain audience, it is all tomatoes in one basket. But we need to take care of this risk at some point of time. Now, here, geographical diversification will serve that purpose because the jurisdictions are different. The laws are different. You will have different tax laws. You will have different permissible investments. Everything will be different. We need to diversify among geographies like this. That is, it will also take care of the currency risk because everything is in INR. So whatever happens in the exchange rate situation, your whole portfolio gets affected at single point of time. Or earlier, as I was saying about the regulatory risk, we saw the capital gains tax coming up at 10%. Now people who have large equity portfolios, all the gains from that equity portfolio got taxed at once. So this kind of risk we need to mitigate by diversifying overseas. Now the second logical question is how to do that? Fine, I mean that is another, maybe a topic of another panel discussion. It's so big. And by the way, we have, so this is one thing to mention that we have started this journey for our family office in 2007 when first LRS remittance went out. Since then, in last 15 years, we have explored and utilized many legal ways to send large remittances outside. Now we are significantly present right now in the overseas markets. with our own investment companies and trust structures outside India. This is one of the other regions or areas where we are advising other families. And lastly, I will only mention is that the jurisdiction, the choice of jurisdiction is extremely important in this case. This word of caution I am giving everyone is that whenever you think about doing this, that choice of jurisdiction will decide a lot of things, a lot of success will come from that choice of jurisdiction. So keep that in mind definitely. And apart from that, the quantum of investments that you want to take outside, the percentage allocation, asset allocation, all this diversification comes from there, right? That also needs to be taken into consideration.
Thanks, Arun. In fact, one common misconception is that bahar paisa nahi banta hai.
Absolutely.
Right? There is a lot of money to be made outside as well. US was the best performing market for the last decade. India will always not be the best performing market forever and ever. There will be ups and downs in every market. India is great, but we always have a home bias risk that we have to address. And while we are talking about risk and diversification, there's another aspect where we need to grow our wealth too, right? And how do we take known measurable risk to grow in wealth, and some of that risk will really be taken by our startup investing or alternative investments, right? And I want Mr. Patni to talk about that first, and Amit to probably talk about their journey in that space.
Sure. Yeah, I think as Amol said, you have certain part of your portfolio goes to global investing into US markets and other products and real estate, which help to diversify. The other part is that there's a lot of family offices now in the last 4 to 5 years investing in startups. Of course, there's a FOMO created, fear of missing out, So I had seen families who just wanted to be in the startup, or wanted some share in Nykaa or somehow into KTM or so many of them because everybody was investing. But I think prudent approach is that there is a risk is high in startups, and of course there is a high reward also if you make it. So it has to be done in a proper fashion, not sporadically. So we as a family office when we exited Patni, so one thing what me and my brother did was we started our own fund. So we launched Nirvana Venture Advisors, which is a consumer internet fund. We anchored the fund, then we raised third-party capital, and then we started another fund into big data. So we have like 4 funds running. Some of them have exited and given good return, and some are on the way. Apart from that, we also allocate into startups through other venture funds, like Waterfield has launched fund of funds where we are allocating, and there are other good funds where we are taking some exposure. And we also have direct investing, co-investments with other families. So wherever we find good opportunity where we would like to take a stake and be there. So I think I would like to say that let's do it prudently, have a structured way of investing into startups, and have a consciousness that it's a risk capital, so you may lose the money. But if you do it prudently and you choose the right companies, some of them will work, some of them will not work. But overall, you will yet make money, if you look at the overall analysis. So that would be my approach.
Just to add to what Amit has said, I think every individual who has investable surplus, and more importantly, every family office needs to have some exposure to this. Some of the reasons for this, one, it could be diversification, because in our own businesses, we are heavily concentrated on 1 or 2 main operating businesses. So one needs to also be having some sort of diversification in other businesses. Plus, every few decades, the economy and the landscape keeps changing. So it was the industrial revolution, then you had the electronics coming in, now you have the digital coming in, and hopefully something like sustainability is coming later. So one cannot, however smart an investor, entrepreneur you are, you cannot be right in everything. You need to keep your investments diversified across all. That's one reason. Second, however good or smart we are, it is important to be aware what the kids today are doing, what some of the new startups are doing, what are they thinking. Now Elon Musk is crazy, we can say, but we just need to not copy and do the craziness, but at least be aware what all crazy things people are doing. Some may be successful, some may not be successful, but it's important as entrepreneurs, as people who are in business, to keep knowing what's happening in the landscape, what's coming up tomorrow. Third, in nature also, as in sense you are doing something which you've been done for last 20 years may be very good, but 15 years back someone was doing renewable. It's important to understand what it is, maybe have a finger in the pie. You can't close down your business and get into renewables all of a sudden, but it's important maybe at an appropriate time when you see the green shoots coming, it could be an acquisition target for you, or you could set up your own shop after that, but there's a time for everything. So I think there's strategic value that also one derives into investing in this. The only reason one should probably stay away is if you are doing it because it's become a little fashionable and it's the new Ferrari in town. So maybe buying a Ferrari is not good enough show off. Maybe investing in 100 startups and saying that I've invested in 100 startups is a little fashionable. So that may be a reason to not do it. But I think we can afford to lose capital because you are in the entire investable surplus of your in the thali. It should be like a chutney and achar position, which you at least have and you start doing, because the returns here could also be more, as is the risk is. So that's I think from a, and you should try and invest through funds, because everyone may not have the expertise, and maybe platforms like Jito Angel Network, etc. We have one beautifully, at least for us gents, where we can invest through that itself. So I think we should go through a platform, get peer learning, and also the deals are filtered and good quality deals are coming on the platform. We cannot source good deals directly on our own individual. Even family offices now is becoming tougher to get quality deals. 5 years back was different, today it is different. Yeah. So that's my bit on the startup.
I just want to add an antidote. So when we started Nirvana Venture Advisors in 2011, I went to my father and I said, me and my brother Aryan, we put so much of anchor capital. He said, you are mad. You'll lose all your money. And we are from software business where you see 40% profit and everything. What is this? And then I convinced him, and he said, what is this internet? That time we didn't even know what is Flipkart, This is 2011. So then I said, look, we will do it. We'll go with the mind कि zero bhi ho jayega. But we want to do this as a business. We will get a correct fund manager. We'll have the right thesis. We raised money from Japan and Germany, and we did not do spray and pray. We did only I think 12 companies. Today the fund is at 4x. We just had a unicorn ship rocket, which has now at 1.2 billion. So of course it took 8 years, 9 years. We had to be very patient. At some point I used to tell my fund manager, "Galat business kiya hai, ye nahi karna." But yeah, you have a lot of patience, and but you learn a lot on the way. Now my father, he says, "Paytm mein dala kya nahi, Nykaa mein dala."
No, I totally agree with Amit actually, and I think that this is more like a game of risk appetite. It's nothing right or wrong in investment gamut. What we want to do is, it depends on what we actually want to achieve. If I want to achieve preservation of my capital, then my risk appetite is automatically low. And I'm talking from proper investment perspective and not from the the perspective of giving a boost to the startup ecosystem and all that. That is absolutely fine. What I'm trying to say is that as family office employees, I would say we are just employees. We are custodians of the wealth of this family. We are sitting here to protect that wealth and enhance that wealth. So what generally we need to do in this case is that we need to fall in line with the risk appetite of the family. But personally, I would think that my own money should go into a particular startup or particular angel investment, which I can do very well. But for family, the family money, I am sitting as a custodian. I need to pay attention to what family says. So here, like Amit, we have also very small exposure to this space, but it is absolutely through most of it is through VC funds or PE funds. It is not directly through, because we understand our limitation at this one point that we cannot source the deals. It's very difficult to get very high quality deals and all this thing. Secondly, the monitoring becomes a challenge for us. So monitoring in what sense? Not the numbers, but whether the business is going in the right direction or not. Whether whatever money I have given to the business, are they utilizing it in a proper way or not? All these things need to be monitored very carefully. That is our constraint at this point. But we have this exposure to some funds.
Great. In fact, monitoring is a very difficult chore actually for the family office. All the investments, keeping track of what's happening across. In fact, one area which requires monitoring, which I don't think is done enough, is philanthropy. Right? Philanthropy. People do a lot of philanthropy in India, and a lot of it is not tracked. They have a large heart. I think, especially in your community, it's prevalent across. Right? But how do we monitor that? How do we ensure that it has the right impact that we want to do or want it to have? I think Amit has done some work on it, and he's seen some of that happening through his family office. I'd like you to touch upon that a little bit.
So I think that's one of the plus points of having a family office. Because specifically in our community where we end up doing a lot of philanthropy, but it's more ad hoc, and it's more that you're sitting in office and someone comes and a dear friend comes and he pushes you, and early in the morning you had no clue, but just because he said and you really, that cause touched your heart, you end up writing a check of 1.5 crores and saying okay live. Right? So it's a great thing to do, but I think we all have to admit, however rich we are, we only have a finite capital to do it. And we want it to be more bang for the buck. Just like in business, when you have a budget for marketing and promotion, you want to put in 5 crores, but you want the bang for the buck. Why not for philanthropy? In fact, more for philanthropy, because you want to touch as many lives and improve as many lives as possible. So in a family office setup, you have that choice, and you are sort of having that bandwidth and ability to monitor the impact that each of your philanthropic activities have done. You can also choose to do something which is low impact because it's close to your heart. That's not a problem. At least you have a dashboard which tells you what is happening where and where you should put more money, more time, etc. So I think the family office, having a family office, this is one of the advantages of doing, because you can do more and more things. It becomes a proper vertical and you start monitoring. And what gets measured gets done better and better now. And that's it.
Great point. Great point. I think when we covered this all, I think we want to sum up how do we start, right? Who should look at it, really? And I think I would probably have closing comments from each one of you on what you think of this space and how they can actually begin this process of thinking about consolidating their own family office. I'll start from you, Amol, and then maybe we can go on to questions from the audience.
Sure, thanks. So the closing remarks I would, as in the interest of time, I would say who should look at it is a question which is not easily answered, because it depends on the cost element which has to be justified by the corpus that you have. This is one angle of looking at it. But apart from it, the current trend that is emerging is that many families are not afraid of reaching out. They are not limiting their family office affairs to their own knowledge base. They are actually approaching other families. They are approaching other friends and advisors who are external. They are not the part of their family office, but still they get to draw on the collective intelligence of the whole ecosystem, which is very important. And that trend is very welcome. That should happen more and more. So here, that is one thing. Secondly, the family office is a setup in a broad way. I would just sum it up in one sentence. Family office is a setup or a team that caters to each and every need of the family, may it be investments or tax or compliances or banking or accounts or whatever. Everything encompassed under one roof is what I would call a family office, a true family office. And then they become the custodians, the family becomes the wealth generator, and that formidable combination runs for a long time. Properly established, properly structured, this can actually go generations and generations together. I think this is a fantastic trend that is emerging. We are learning from European or other developed countries' family offices. Technology is becoming a very important aspect as well. So recently we have we have subscribed to a very good analytical software. So now the analysis becomes more robust. Now we can understand the investment more. So this is how I think it should flow. And everyone, every entrepreneur at some point of time, I think should consider setting up a family office with all these attributes coming together. And there are now the ecosystems developing for single family offices as well to help each other, to come reach out to each other and get the most out of that collective intelligence. I think that's what I would sum it up.
Yeah, I think Amol has correctly put it. But as long as you have a medium-sized operating company, even though it's small, I think you have to start thinking of a family office even in a small way. The concept part, in terms of starting in a small way, creating wealth for individuals, going to a multi-family office like Waterfield Advisors and taking their advice. And as you grow bigger, you can have your own person who look after your investments. But I think the seeds have to be sown now at a stage where you know that you are going to leap into a bigger wealth. Not wait till the wealth comes and then suddenly you know what to do. So I think it should be done now.
I think it's well covered by Amit and Amol. I'll just add, I think the beginning point should be the mindset and the realization that you need one. That realization could be a trigger of one or more of these points. One, when you have reasonable investable surplus already or coming in soon that you want to start getting, or when your existing business may be very risk prone and you want to sort of ring fence it and create a corpus kitty outside of it, then that is the second thing. Third is when your family is growing and suppose two brothers started the business 20 years later, both your kids are now coming into business and you want to now start thinking about ring fencing, structuring, planning, etc. So this is the right time to do it. So one or more of these triggers should be the right time, but I think the realization mindset has to be there. You start off with a single office if you have single family office, if your corpus is reasonable. If not, then please start with a multi-family office with a view to transition to a single family office once your corpus or your thing becomes a little bit more reasonable for that setup. But do start thinking and speaking to people, getting their views, getting how they have done through their journey, meeting advisors. You may still not do business with them. Meet up with them, understand, wait it out, let the right time come for yourself and do it. But I think start thinking for sure. Even if you have a small mid-sized business and you are in your late 40s, early 50s, I think you should surely think about it.
Thank you everybody. Floor is open for questions, please. Gentleman there. Can you get the mic to him, please? We can borrow one of these mics.
I've not been able to recollect as to who spoke this point, because I was sitting at the back. I've been working on this particular stuff, but honestly speaking, I'm totally confused about the family office. I personally feel one point was there that the risk is to be hedged, in the sense that you are totally into India. Now the problem is that number one, you are exposed to one set of laws. So just in case the point of estate duty or whatever it is there, which was being mitigated, which we did for one of the guys in London, because of the estate duty, we transferred him. The residentship was transferred to India. He died in India. He transferred the property to his kids, and the kids again took it to UK. Now my point is, if I have to mitigate this risk, and I agree with you, probably it is possible the estate duties might come in. Now my point is, if we have to explore the countries, I've been exploring underdeveloped countries for the last 6 years, almost 30-40 countries. Now, how you would find out whether I have to go in for a developed country like US, whereby I don't even know whether the dollar is valid or not, or whether I should go in for Europe, where I don't find, apart from Germany, any country being stable. Now, that is the place where you all people can at least contribute to my knowledge, where I can at least make a certain point of decision what to choose.
Amol.
Yeah, if I understood your question clearly, it is basically fundamentally about choosing a jurisdiction. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So, in itself is a very big subject of conversation, which we can definitely get in touch later on. But on a broader level, I will say something, is that it's not about whether the laws support you at this point of time or not, because when you do the structuring, you do it first in India. That is the first thing, because when you are taking that exposure, you need to have a structure which is allowed to remit funds outside India. That is one. Secondly, what do you do with that money when it is sent out? It goes into an individual account, or it goes into a fund company's account, it goes into a VCC's account, it goes into your trust account. We don't. All those things have to be considered, and we can create a structure that will mitigate that estate duty risk which is already prevalent in that country. For example, UK levies 40% estate duty, where if you buy a property in UK, when it will be transferred to your next generation, it will be taxed at 40%. Now, if your financial assets are not enough to pay that 40% duty, then that property has to be liquidated. How will you pay? So in that case, in the beginning it can be bought in a particular entity which will mitigate this risk, either that, or if you have already bought it, how can you create liquidity to pay the estate duty at? All these questions become relevant. And for the broader selection of jurisdiction, you need to have a stable jurisdiction, stable politically. I'm not talking about everything else. It's politically. The regulations in that country are reasonably stable over the period of years. For example, you take Singapore, or you take a country like Switzerland. Right now I am not touching the cost aspect, I am only touching the stability aspect. But you can consider such jurisdictions which are absolutely stable. Now the whole world is putting money into their country. Everyone is present in Singapore, everyone is present in Switzerland, everyone is present in Monaco. So what happens is that it's very unlikely that some drastic changes may happen in this country's political system or the jurisdictions or tax laws, because everyone's interest is already in there.
Just one reason for me, maybe I was not able to explain the question properly. The main point is that all the countries which have developed, they have seen a certain cycle. Now the developing countries, if you look at a number of countries, they still follow the old excise laws which India was following in 70s and 80s. So their taxation allows that till the 10% or $1 million, you don't pay a tax of more than 10%. There are no estate duty laws. There is no money involved in taking a residential. Like I heard in the morning for Malawi and maybe Estonia and other aspects also in another interesting point. My only one point is that how can you assure that in 197 countries we are trying to create a perpetual wealth for our family? But the problem is, we are creating another question mark for the person, whether that is questionable or not. So am I coaxing my family to look into 10 domains then, and have the problem to be sorted on 10 different domains?
No, so it's not like that. For example, so the tax laws that you were mentioning, basically what we want to do at the beginning is to create a structure which will automatically mitigate those risks. For example, just one quick example, many people know about it. In Singapore, there is a tax incentive which you get, which is a lifetime tax exemption, 13U, sorry, 13X. But in this particular tax incentive, you don't have to worry about any change that will happen further in future, because this is a lifetime tax exemption. Now, how do you believe the government? Because it is Singaporean government. That's what I was saying, that you are choosing the jurisdiction wisely, your half work is done. And secondly, there are two different, your question had two different aspects. Or portfolio location, and other is investing in the jurisdiction. You can set up a structure in Singapore and invest worldwide. Singapore is just a conduit, it's a pot. But so the custody of the assets will be in Singapore. But you can have exposure to US stocks, to European stocks, to Latin American stocks. No problem with that. So the diversification can happen all over the world, but you are still maintaining that tax efficiency and the stability in the jurisdiction.
Hello, thank you panelists for the wonderful thoughts told you. One quick question, and I know the answers could be subjective, but looking for more ballparks. What's the typical corpus with which you've seen family offices sort of start off? And second, what's the typical percentage split between, say, equities, debt, real estate, philanthropy? Again, ballparks.
Talking about
the typical corpus with which family offices start, and second, what's the percentage split across these categories?
I think if you have say $100 million, which is like 5 to 700 crores, would be the correct size to have a family office proper setup. Because normally internationally also between 50 basis points to 1% is the cost of a family office setup. So which means 1% of $1 million roughly. Yeah, 5 to 5 crores is the minimum cost. Today when you hire a professional CIO and at least 4-5 professionals for back office. So I would say that yes, that would be 500 to 700 crores liquid assets you should have, which would be justified for a full-fledged family office. In terms of asset allocation now, it varies from the balanced portfolios normally like 30 to 30% debt, 40% equity, and then you have 10% real estate, 10% private equity venture, and now there is a lot of options and alternatives. So you'll have another 10% in alternatives. So generally that is the balanced split. Now of course there are people who do 80% equity, which is a different aspect altogether.
Can I add something? Just one thing I can add is there is a middle way as well. So as Mr. Patni said, it's right. I mean, you should have that justification to your cost in terms of your size. But two different aspects I would put forth for your consideration. If you have some very good friend who is also an entrepreneur family, and say it's 300 crore worth, and say if you are 400 crore worth, automatically we are coming to 1 million. In this case, sorry, 100 million. In this case, there can be a joint family office that can be set up, that is one. But here you have to take one thing very seriously into consideration is how are you going to separate these two families? That is one thing. Here we can actually, there are multi-family offices which is now the concept coming up now. But most of the times you have to be careful because you need to make sure the services that are being offered are comprehensive. Because otherwise there are a lot of cost leakages that happen. It's like, you are paying for investment management, then there will be some outsourcing that will happen for taxation, there will be some outsourcing will happen for secretarial compliances. All these things will start happening, and at every level you will be paying. Not maybe directly, but that cost leakage will happen. So the best solution would be to go for someone who has a comprehensive offering in terms of family office. Like one SFO, what it needs is something that should be offered without any exclusions. This is something I would put forth for your consideration.
Amol, you can do something better. You can catch hold of Vivek after this. Waterfield is already doing a multi-family office, so do catch hold of him. They are doing multi-family offices. So just on a more serious note, I think instead of just trying to join two families, there are existing multi-family office operators. One who are very niche, who just manage say a handful of 5 to 10 families. You can take their services, or they are larger setups like Waterfield who will do for multiple families. Even if your size is say maybe $50 million to even larger, even if you have more than $100 million, some people prefer still to not do an SFO but work alongside with MFO. So again, no one size fits all. It's all case to case, your context, what your debt equity allocation should be, and whether you should go the SFO or the MFO way is all very, very contextual. So I think, but you should explore everything.
It will again boil down to that mindset as you were talking about, because the mindset is that where I am going to go is that agency has the mindset of a family office. That is the bottom line, so that select few family offices I was mentioning is because of this, as they have the same mindset as us, and that is the reason why we are together. Apart from that, when the mindset changes slightly, we have got all the spectrum. Waterfield does a great job in these people are having that slightly different mindset than ours, but that mindset works for some families, and our mindset works for some families. This is how the family chooses where to go, right? No questions? Did we really explain it so well?
Rajat, we can.
There is one question.
Now, just Patni sir, one thing was that the amount that you have spoken about setting up of a family office, it may be beyond a certain reach of most of the people who might be thinking on the lines of at least whatever they have, they want to create a perpetuity of their income and the wealth. So how to cope up with that kind of a stuff? Because that sounds to be maybe on a little higher side, at least for myself, and I'm not speaking on behalf of others.
Yeah, so I think as Amit was saying and Amar was saying, if you are, as I said also earlier, as long as you're even a smaller size, I think you can start small by not having a full-fledged family office. You can have one person who does your planning of asset allocation, and you work with other advisors, external tax advisors and external agencies, and that's when again Waterfield, which is a multi-family office, helping families who are not going to go for a full-fledged family office. And again, there are many families who are even 2,000 crores in size, but they don't have the mindset to have a family office. So they again go to advisors like Waterfield, where they said you manage the things for us, because we don't want to get involved into managing a team, and if supposing someone has 2,000 crores in the bank, you may say that look, I'll just go and settle in Greek and let the money be handled by Waterfield, and I enjoy life. So because having a full-fledged family office means somebody from a family also needs to be there and needs to be involved and monitoring. So that kind of against the mindset as we were all talking about.
Hi, Pankaj Jain here. Two quick questions. One, does the panel sees estate duty coming into India? One. And do you see any regulations coming around family office and their operations in the near future?
Okay, I'll take this question in a way that estate duty, I think that estate duty comes in, I'm not talking about panel, we think that estate duty will come in India at some point of time, in some form. There is one interesting fact, since 2014, we have seen a trend of taxing the super rich more and more. As we see that trend emerging on the surcharges side, dividend becoming taxable, surcharges increasing constantly. Now the highest slab is around 48.8, 42.8 kind of percentage. So that trend is definitely there. It's going in the right direction according to that, creating that equality or reducing the inequality, I would say. That is how they would look at it. So there is a high probability that estate duty will come in India at some point of time. The other question that you were asking about the regulation, it's very difficult to formulate what a family office is, legally speaking, because it's going to be established in some form that already exists, which will be under the purview of Companies Act or LLP Act. But you can create a private limited company or an LLP or whatever structure you want. It's all that is already present. So the regulations are already there. What you call family office is very hard to define legally.
Need to take as a family office, like my company Ray Global, as a investment advisory license from SEBI. So even Waterfield has that, there is a regulation which is there.
SEBI regulations are there on that. On the part of estate duty, whether it will come or not, so I think we can just say taxes are almost as certain as death. It's only we don't know when they are going to come. So I think it's probably going to come.
I would like to take the next question. I have two things in mind. I'm right here, and all of you panelists are, obviously well qualified to answer. One is that you set up a family offices when you have significant amount of money which you have made out of your business, which now needs to be managed properly. Now, my question is, for example, your business is automobile, okay, where you are making internal combustion engine, regular engine, petrol engine का business है. So, is it not wise to have a family office which is actually investing in startups which are on the counter of the EV side or the hydrogen fuel side, to be able to counterbalance your business risk? And whether taking that risk is a risk or not taking that risk is a bigger risk. So that is my question number one. Question number two is, we all know that there is this 3-generation jinx, and we have all been very eager from a very long time to break this jinx. And I know certain families in some pharmaceutical behemoths in the world, which are probably 6th generation, 7th generation, 8th generation, where management is different from ownership. So will creating family office break this 3-generation problem which we are facing? One, do we need a counter business? And second, the 3-generation risk. I would request all of you to probably answer this as a question. Thank you so much.
I'll go first and Mike is with me. So I think one, yes, I think that is one of the important reasons why one should invest into alternate investments, because it could be strategic to your business or it could be a very good diversification from the existing businesses that you have. So if you are in thermal power, for example, as I said, then I think to get into renewable energy through alternate investments and early stage startup into renewable energy may be a very important thing for you, both as a diversification and also as a potential target for tomorrow when you want to set up your own shop in there. So the learnings from that investment could be helpful over there. The second question that you said is on succession planning. So I think the most important facet of a family office should be to ensure that the wealth of the family is multi-generational, not that we get the highest rate of return. I think to preserve the wealth for 100 years should be one of the main important facets why one should be looking at family office. And it can help ensure, probably it is only one of the few tools with which you can help ensure that the wealth is preserved across generations. On a single ad hoc basis, I think, depending on, children to children, it's very difficult to do that. It has to be very formal, informal, whatever be the case. Yeah.
And this first question I will answer quickly is that whether you said it's a bigger risk to not to take the risk in the private space of startup. That is, I would say that it's really very subjective to the family. As I was saying, what is the purpose? Because if you say that I'm not taking, I'm not doing investments in startups, and that is the bigger risk I'm taking. The context is to earn returns. If the context, if you change the context to preservation of capital, then it is not a risk. It is more to do with beating the inflation and doing nothing else. I mean, this is the other end of it. I'm saying that that the whole spectrum is between these two, whether to take a high risk, high reward kind of investments or just preserve the capital that beat the investments. Beat the inflation. And second question that you said, as I agree with Amit, it's extremely important to protect and preserve it for say 100 years time. The trust life is 99 years. So when you are doing it, you are already taken care of 3 generations here. So it is really, really important.
Just want to add a word on that succession bit. There will be numerous examples, like you said, in Europe of families who have segregated their business from their family assets. And numerous examples even in Japan, where there have been businesses set up for 2-3 centuries, but the family wealth is managed completely separately. The government is a fabulous job of completely segregating your family wealth from the business decisions completely. So that addresses your previous point of whether you should invest in startups. It is a business decision, not necessarily a family office decision all the time. Family office decision makes sense where they want to seek a higher rate of return and they want to diversify into other asset classes.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there are many people who still want to ask questions, but since we are running out of time, we would end the session here. And also, there have been many new members here today who weren't aware of Family Office Summit, and the panelist here has very beautifully tried and they've managed to explain in detail about Family Office Summit. So with that, I would request, but before that, I would request everyone to please give a huge round of applause to all our panelists and also our moderator here who has been asking them all the questions. And with that, I would request Siddharth Jain, GIFT Chairman, to please come up here on stage to give the vote of thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. I really apologize for the mic quality to start with. I know that it was not audible at the end, and I think it got corrected only mid-session. To start with, I would like to thank all the panelists and the anchor and the moderator to have spared time for us, for Jito, and explain this extraordinarily important aspect for so many of us Marwadi and Gujarati Jain families, of how to break this jinx of 3 generations. This was something which was in my mind, and that is the reason why we kind of at GIF brought it forward. I hope that you have also gotten a flavor of what they are doing in their own family office to make it at least 100 years and beyond. They have set it up for 100 years, but they are thinking probably 500 years, 1000 years. So it's kind of forever kind of a mindset. And they have all done really well in what they do, and I would thank all of you to have also patiently been listening, and thank you so much for coming to this session. Thank you so much.
Sir ji, oh sir.